Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're taking a deep dive into Steven Bartlett's extraordinary book, The Diary of a CEO. Now, if you're picturing a typical business textbook, maybe filled with fleeting trends, think again. This isn't really about quarterly reports or the latest buzzwords. This book offers a collection of fundamental, truly timeless laws for building, well, not just incredible ventures, but for becoming the best version of yourself. It's all incredibly well-researched, deeply rooted in psychology and science, and, illuminated by a wealth of real-world experience. And who better to guide us than Steven Bartlett himself? I mean, he's achieved incredible success, founding billion-dollar companies, investing in over 40 ventures, and of course, hosting one of the fastest-growing podcasts globally. He's interviewed hundreds of successful individuals.
It's quite remarkable how Bartlett actually constructed this book. He didn't just, pluck ideas from the ether. He meticulously synthesized over 700 hours of interviews from his podcast. Then he went a step further, surveying tens of thousands of people to validate these very laws. So what we're about to explore with you is essentially a powerful shortcut. It distills crucial principles that apply to anyone, really, regardless of their industry or passion. Principles that will remain true today, tomorrow, or even, say, a century from now. Our mission in this deep dive is basically to hand you that potent shortcut to being well-informed.
Okay, let's begin our exploration with Pillar the Self. The self. The focus here is squarely on the individual. We're starting with Law 1. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order. Bartlett kicks us off with a really vivid anecdote about his friend David. So David's enjoying his morning coffee, right? And this sweaty, breathless man jogs by, talking wildly about building spaceships and putting microchips in monkeys' brains. David naturally wondered if this man was, well, maybe a bit unhinged.
Understandable reaction.
Totally. Then he learned it was Elon Musk. And suddenly, all those seemingly impossible ambitions became entirely believable. It truly illustrates how understanding someone's full potential, or as Bartlett calls it, their full buckets, makes even the extraordinary seem, well, within reach.
And Bartlett defines these 5 buckets of human potential so precisely. First, what you know, that's your knowledge. Second, what you can do, your skills. Third is who you know, your network. Fourth, what you have, your resources. And finally, number 5 is what the world thinks of you, your reputation. These are the foundational elements, sort of a hierarchy of personal growth.
It's a powerful framework, isn't it? Bartlett even shares this poignant moral dilemma from when he was 18. He grappled with whether building a company for personal gain was truly more noble than returning to Africa, where he was born, to maybe save even one life. This question lingered for years until he met the guru, Radhanath Swami. When Bartlett presented his dilemma, the Swami's simple, profound advice was, you cannot pour from empty buckets.
That insight really drives home the point, doesn't it? Investing in knowledge at that very first bucket consistently yields the highest returns. When that knowledge is then put into practice, transforming into a skill, it naturally cascades down to fill all the other buckets, your network, your resources, your reputation. But the question this raises for us is, why do so many people fall short of this? Often it's ego, right? It tempts us to bypass those initial crucial steps of building knowledge and skills in favor of, say, immediate money or status. Bartlett gives this compelling example of a 21-year-old named Richard who jumped into a CEO role without the necessary experience, building his career on incredibly weak foundations.
Yeah, it sounds like a house of cards, definitely. As Bartlett puts it so well, those who hoard gold have riches for a moment. Those who hoard knowledge and skills have riches for a lifetime. True prosperity, he argues, isn't really about what you possess, but what you know and what you can truly do. Okay, so once you've started filling those buckets with knowledge, the next step, according to Law 2, is to master it. You must create an obligation to teach it. It's fascinating to consider that Steven Bartlett, who now captivates global audiences, once stood utterly frozen and mute on a stage at 14. He describes that public speaking experience at his school as, well, dramatic, yet he completely transformed himself into a master communicator.
And his core technique for this transformation, creating an obligation to teach. This principle taps into skin in the game. It's a powerful psychological lever. It basically means having something tangible to lose, whether it's money or maybe a public commitment. This activates loss aversion and strongly compels you to act. Think about it. If you want to truly graft a company, maybe buy some of its stock. To deeply understand Web 3.0, perhaps acquire an NFT. Or, to consistently hit the gym, commit to a WhatsApp group where you post your daily workouts. In each scenario, there's either monetary or social currency at stake, pushing you forward.
That's where it really clicks, I think. This concept aligns beautifully with the renowned Fineman Technique. Bartlett simplifies and updates it for us. First, learn something thoroughly. Second, teach it to a child using the simplest words possible. And third, share it publicly to receive clear, unfiltered feedback. It powerfully underlines James Clear's famous observation: the person who learns the most in any classroom is the teacher.
So connecting this to the larger picture, mastery isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about learning, simplifying, and consistently sharing. As Steven perfectly summarizes, you don't become a master because you're able to retain knowledge. You become a master when you're able to release it.
Okay, our next insight, Law 3. You must never disagree, this one.
Well, this particular law really resonated with me. Bartlett begins by recounting a childhood memory of his mother shouting heatedly at his father, who appeared completely oblivious. He describes these as prolonged, unproductive screaming matches. I think many of us have either witnessed or, been part of those kinds of conversations where absolutely nothing gets resolved. And science gives us a clear explanation for why this happens. Tali Sharot, a professor of cognitive neuroscience, conducted a study published in Nature Neuroscience. It revealed that when people encounter disagreement, their brains literally freeze and shut down. They become completely unreceptive to new information. Consider the persistent beliefs about climate change among U.S. Republicans. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence, survey data actually showed a decrease in the number of Republicans who believe climate change is man-made over a decade. Simply arguing furiously is, demonstrably ineffective.
So what's the actionable takeaway for us here? If you want to be heard, you absolutely must avoid leading with disagreement. Bartlett articulates it plainly. The strength of any carefully reasoned, logical argument isn't likely to be recognized when you open with disagreement, regardless of how much evidence you have or how objectively correct you are. Instead, he advises introducing your rebuttal by finding common ground, acknowledging what you agree on, or maybe showing you understand their perspective first.
This point connects directly with advice from communication experts like Julian Treasure and Paul Brunson. They emphasize that to be an effective communicator, you must first listen deeply so the other person feels heard, right? And then respond in a way that makes them feel understood. Shared studies provide the scientific validation for this approach. People are just far more open to listening when they feel fundamentally understood on an emotional level.
It's a powerful reminder for all of us. Our words should be bridges to comprehension, not barriers to connection. Disagree less, understand more. Let's move on to Law 4. You do not get to choose what you believe. This law starts with a really compelling thought experiment. Imagine a terrorist holding your loved one hostage. Now imagine this terrorist suddenly turns water into wine. Bartlett's survey revealed that an astounding 77% of people would believe this terrorist was, in fact, Jesus. This starkly illustrates a fundamental truth about how beliefs operate, doesn't it?
It really highlights that beliefs are primarily based on what we perceive as evidence. But that evidence is subjectively interpreted through our experiences and biases, often irrespective of objective truth. Just consider. There are still individuals who firmly believe the Earth is flat, a significant percentage who believe Santa Claus is real, and many who are convinced Bigfoot exists. These beliefs persist despite overwhelming counter-evidence, demonstrating the power of, subjective acceptance.
And our brains don't exactly make it easy to challenge those beliefs, do they? Confirmation bias means we naturally gravitate toward information that supports what we already think. It makes it even harder to shift perspectives. So how do we actually change beliefs, whether our own or someone else's? Tali Sharot identifies 4 key factors: existing evidence, your confidence in it, new evidence, and your confidence in that new evidence. Crucially, directly attacking someone's current beliefs almost never works. Instead, the strategy is to inspire new ones by presenting positive benefits. A perfect illustration is the MMR vaccine. Researchers successfully changed parents' minds, not by arguing against their misconceptions, but by providing new, truthful information about how the vaccine directly prevents deadly diseases. And here's a truly counterintuitive revelation. Engaging in detailed self-review can actually reduce the conviction of your own beliefs. Studies, for example, asking people to explain the mechanics of a toilet or even political proposals, show that when individuals are pressed for details, their confidence in their understanding significantly diminishes. Bartlett's own journey overcoming stage fright serves as a testament to this. Consistent exposure to positive evidence through repeated public speaking gradually eroded his limiting belief.
So bringing this into focus, beliefs are incredibly stubborn, yet they are malleable. To truly change them, you need convincing new evidence, ideally from a trusted source, and evidence that offers positive outcomes proves to be the most effective. It's a powerful and liberating reminder for all of us. Stop telling yourself you're not qualified, good enough, or worthy. Growth happens when you start doing the things you're not qualified to do.
Let's delve into Law 5. You must lean into bizarre behavior. Bartlett sets the stage with the cautionary tale of a former CEO of a massive music store chain. The CEO leaned out of digital music, absolutely convinced that people would always prefer CDs. Years later, his global music store was out of business. History is just rife with similar examples, isn't it? Clifford Stoll famously scoffed at the internet in 1995.
Yeah, and Newsweek, which published his prediction, eventually went fully online.
Exactly. A bank president in 1903 dismissed automobiles as a mere novelty, and Andy Grove, Intel's CEO, called a personal communicator in every pocket a pipe dream in 1992. Even Steve Ballmer, Microsoft's CEO, famously laughed at the iPhone, declaring it had no chance of significant market share.
The striking point here is that leaning out isn't merely about being wrong. It's about being so arrogantly certain of your own correctness that you completely refuse to listen, learn, or acknowledge new information. This behavior is frequently fueled by cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when new facts directly clash with our self-perception or deeply held identity. It speaks to a profound human tendency. We would rather be dead than wrong. It's quite extreme when you put it like that.
I remember my own vivid experience back in 2012, trying to convince a leading fashion brand to embrace social media. The marketing director was visibly terrified of potential criticism and flat out dismissed me, claiming traditional magazine advertising was perfectly sufficient. Their company filed for bankruptcy in 2019. It was precisely that fear of the bizarre, the new and unconventional that ultimately sealed their fate, I think.
And that's exactly the crux of Steven's argument. Innovation, by its very nature, disrupts because it's different. By definition, it should look weird, feel unconventional, be misunderstood, and sound wrong.
Okay.
He directly links the founding of his company, Third Web, in the Web 3.0 space to this very principle. He observed all the right people dismissing, attacking it, and expressing anger about Web 3.0, which for him was actually a powerful signal that something truly significant was on the horizon.
So how can we avoid this trap of leaning out? Bartlett offers several valuable techniques. One is what he calls the Shaman Perez solution, consciously defaulting to the belief that two seemingly conflicting ideas can simultaneously be true without immediately trying to force them into perfect logical alignment. It's about cultivating a mindset of reserved judgment and consistently asking honest questions of yourself like, why am I believing what I believe? Is it possible that I'm wrong? Am I leaning out simply because I don't understand this new concept?
The powerful takeaway from this law is abundantly clear. You have to risk failure to succeed. You have to risk heartbreak to love. You have to risk criticism for the applause. You have to risk the ordinary to achieve the extraordinary. If you live avoiding risk, you're risking missing out on life. That really hits home.
Let's shift our focus now to Law 6. Ask, don't tell the question behavior effect. This is a remarkably simple yet profoundly powerful psychological insight. Consider Ronald Reagan's legendary question to voters during his 1980 presidential campaign. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? He strategically used this question, not a statement of fact, and it contributed significantly to his landslide victory.
The question behavior effect is a fascinating phenomenon. After reviewing over 100 studies, scientists discovered something quite interesting. Asking questions, particularly binary yes-no questions that begin with will, is significantly more effective at influencing behavior than simply telling people what to do. And this influence can last for up to 6 months, apparently. For instance, telling yourself, I will eat vegetables today is less impactful than asking, will I eat vegetables today?
I've actually personally put this into practice. When I encounter a particularly steep hill during a run, I'll ask myself, will you keep running without stopping until you've reached the top? And when I consciously affirm yes, it genuinely helps me push through. You can apply this to others too, right? Asking a friend, will you commit to eating more healthily? Or will you pursue that promotion you've been thinking about?
The inherent power in this approach lies in its ability to force a commitment and appeal to a person's personal or social aspirations. As Steven aptly observes, the great thing about a yes or no question is it doesn't give you any wiggle room to deceive yourself. It forces you to commit one way or the other.
Now we arrive at Law 7. Never compromise your self-story. This law.
Yeah, this one truly resonated deeply with me. Steven shares his interview with championship boxer Chris Eubank Jr. about the nature of mental strength. Eubank Jr. recounted a pivotal near-quitting moment during training in Cuba. He was knocked clean out of the ring by a much larger opponent. His absolute refusal to quit, even when his leg went numb, solidified his self-belief and became an indelible part of his personal narrative, his self-story.
And this narrative connects directly to the U.S. military's Beast Barracks study conducted at West Point. That research revealed that grit and perseverance were far more crucial determinants of success than, say, raw physical strength or intellectual capacity. It introduces the profound concept of self-concept or self-story as our deeply personal belief about who we are, encompassing our capabilities, our limitations, and our ultimate potential. I have a very personal anecdote that illustrates this. At just 8 years old, I was casually told, "Black people can't swim." That single, seemingly innocuous comment ingrained a deeply limiting belief in me. A belief that took 18 long years to finally overcome. It's a stark example of stereotype threat, a phenomenon which studies show can cause Black students to perform worse on tests when reminded of their race, or women to perform worse at math when reminded of their gender.
There was a truly fascinating study on this involving women taking a math test under an alias. When they were able to escape that limiting identity, guess what? They performed just as well as men. This powerfully demonstrates how disarming negative stereotypes can unlock potential. Ultimately, mental toughness, grit, and resilience all stem from cultivating a positive self-story, which is built by the deliberate choices you make when faced with adversity. As Steven states, everything you do with or without an audience provides evidence to you about who you are and what you're capable of.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It's about those small, tough choices, isn't it? Pushing for that 10th rep in the gym when it's easier to stop, initiating that difficult conversation you'd rather avoid, or asking that extra probing question. It's about actively building a robust, positive, and evidence-based self-story, one deliberate choice at a time.
Because as this law concludes so powerfully, the most convincing sign that someone will achieve new results in the future is new behavior in the present.
For our final law in Pillar Tours, we delve into Law 8, Never Fight a Bad Habit. This particular law probably resonates with many of us. Stephen opens with the personal story of his father's secret smoking habit. Interestingly, the book Hooked, combined with the simple act of carrying lollipops, helped his dad successfully quit. It serves as a compelling illustration of why directly fighting habits can often be a losing battle.
Yeah, the science behind this lies in the habit loop. Cue, routine, reward. Research clearly shows that confronting habits head-on is often a, well, foolish strategy. Primarily because humans are inherently action-oriented creatures. There's also the behavioral rebound effect at play. The more you actively try not to think about something, the more persistently it tends to occupy your thoughts. Studies have even shown that smokers who consciously tried not to think about smoking actually ended up thinking about it more frequently.
Crazy, right?
It brings to mind advice from my driving instructor. The car will go where your eyes are looking. If you want to avoid hitting parked cars, don't focus on them. Instead, keep your gaze fixed on where you intend to go. The same principle applies to habits. Concentrate on the desired behavior you wish to cultivate, rather than obsessing over suppressing the bad one. So, what effective strategies can we employ? Well, one of the simplest and most impactful is just ensuring you get enough sleep. Sufficient sleep enhances everything from physical performance and productivity to appetite regulation, all of which directly contribute to successfully breaking unwanted habits. Additionally, it's vital to consider the concept of willpower depletion. Willpower functions much like a muscle that can become fatigued with overuse.
Precisely. This is why attempting to tackle too many new habits simultaneously or setting unsustainable goals frequently leads to failure. It depletes your finite willpower reserves, often resulting in a complete rebound to old patterns. The key then is to be strategic in your approach, not merely forceful. Okay, let's now transition to Pillar the Third, the philosophy. This explores broader principles for navigating the world around us. We'll begin with Law 11. Avoid wallpaper at all costs. This law opens with the harrowing story of Aaron Ralston, the climber who famously had to amputate his own arm to survive being trapped by a boulder. What's truly astonishing is his recollection that he didn't feel pain from the injury itself, a powerful demonstration of habituation.
This phenomena, habituation, is an innate neurological mechanism. It enables our brains to effectively filter out repeated, unimportant stimuli, thereby conserving precious mental capacity. Think about a constant low-level hum in a room. You initially notice it, but then your brain automatically tunes it out. Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate, vividly described this desensitization in concentration camps, where prisoners habituated to horrific sounds and smells as a survival mechanism. It's quite chilling.
This principle also extends to language. Have you ever found yourself repeating a word over and over until it completely loses our meaning? Like saying father, 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 relentlessly. That's semantic satiation. Your brain simply tunes out the word's significance.
Interestingly, highly emotive words, like warning, tend to resist this satiation because they trigger strong emotional associations. This presents a critical question for businesses. How do you cut through the incessant noise of modern life? We also observe the mere exposure effect, our natural tendency to like things that are familiar, which leads to an optimal level of exposure in marketing. This is where something is just new enough to capture attention, but familiar enough to foster affection. However, anything that becomes wallpaper ultimately loses its impact.
It's why terms like revolution in marketing, which were once so potent, have largely lost their power over time. They were impactful once, but now they're just, wallpaper.
Steven Bartlett himself shared his secret for bypassing this habituation filter on his hugely popular YouTube podcast. Instead of the ubiquitous like and subscribe, which viewers had become completely habituated to, he ingeniously changed his call to action to a promise of future rewards. If you subscribe, you'll be rewarded with bigger guests. This strategic shift led to a staggering 430% increase in his subscriber rate. It just underscores the importance of constantly innovating to pierce that ever-present filter of indifference.
Ultimately, it comes down to this. Great marketing is uncomfortable. It springs a dormant brain into a neurological frenzy. The goal is always to make people feel something either way. That insight leads us perfectly into Law 12. You must piss people off. Bartlett notes the growing trend of self-help books featuring curse words in their titles, and it makes complete sense when you consider what he identifies as the least profitable outcome for any marketer: indifference.
The striking truth here is that triggering an emotional response, even one of anger or strong dislike, is far more valuable than eliciting mere indifference. Consider Brewdog, the independent craft brewery. When they launched their hotel chain, they installed beer fridges inside every shower. It's utterly absurd, yes, and probably used very rarely, yet a quick Google Images search reveals countless photos of it. Without uttering a single word, that audacious feature powerfully conveys their punk, disruptive, and rule-breaking brand message, generating a torrent of conversations.
Yeah, it just screams, "We don't play by the rules." But Bartlett also provides a crucial caveat. Even the most effective emotional tactics have a finite shelf life. The brain habituates, and what was once edgy inevitably becomes commonplace.
So what does this all mean for you? The conclusion is blunt, but undeniably true. Some people will love you, some people will hate you, some people simply won't care. You will only connect to the first two, but not to the third. Indifference is the least profitable outcome.
Let's transition to Law 13. Shoot your psychological moonshots first. I find this law incredibly relatable and insightful. Bartlett recounts the story of his hairdresser's one last snip trick. His barber would meticulously inspect his finished haircut, then make one tiny, entirely fictitious snip before declaring he was done. This small, theatrical gesture dramatically improved Bartlett's perception of the haircut, making him feel it was more thorough and precise, even though nothing objectively changed.
This illustrates the concept of his psychological moonshot. A relatively small, often simple investment that drastically improves the perception of something, rather than its fundamental reality. It powerfully demonstrates that it's frequently cheaper, easier, and ultimately more effective to invest in shaping perception than in altering reality itself.
And isn't that precisely what Uber is at its very core? Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp's frustration with the sheer uncertainty of finding a taxi in Paris led to a pivotal question. What if you could request one on your phone? That seemingly simple question marked the genesis of a monumental psychological moonshot.
Uber Labs delved deep into customer psychology and uncovered 5 key principles that profoundly influence satisfaction and perception. First, the peak end rule. People predominantly remember experiences by their most intense moment and their conclusion, not the overall average. Second, idleness aversion. Keeping customers engaged boosts satisfaction. Think of Uber's maps showing your car's progress. Third, operational transparency. Clearly explaining processes fosters trust. Uber's map and detailed fare breakdowns are prime examples. Fourth, uncertainty. Anxiety. Our brains react intensely to uncertainty. An alert stating delayed 50 minutes is far better than a vague delayed. Think of Japan's Shinkansen train cleaners and their legendary 7-minute miracle. Their meticulous cleaning and bows made passengers feel valued, reducing anxiety. And fifth, the goal gradient effect. We work faster as we draw closer to a goal, like stamp cards or LinkedIn profile bars.
Once you're aware of them, you start seeing these psychological moonshots everywhere, like the non-working close button and lifts.
Oh yeah, the placebo button.
Exactly. It creates an illusion of control. Or the use of menthol in hand soaps that produce a tingling sensation, making you feel like it's cleaning effectively.
So the fundamental message here is clear. Do not wage a war on reality. Invest in shaping perceptions. Our truth is not what we see. Our truth is the story we choose to believe.
Let's now explore Law 14. Friction can create value. This idea is wonderfully counterintuitive, isn't it? The notion that intentionally making an experience slightly worse can actually increase its perceived value. Bartlett illustrates this with General Mills' Betty Crocker cake mix. Initially, it was foolproof, containing powdered milk and eggs, but surprisingly, sales were lukewarm.
Yeah, psychologists discovered that homemakers felt a sense of guilt for taking such a shortcut. It felt too easy.
The ingenious solution. General Mills removed the egg from the mix and boldly printed "add an egg" on the package. This seemingly increased friction, but it made the baker feel more personally invested and valuable in the process, and sales subsequently soared.
The real-world applications of this are quite striking. Consider restaurants that serve raw steak on a hot stone. It seems illogical to ask customers to cook their own food, yet it significantly boosts satisfaction. Customers get their steak prepared precisely to their liking, feel involved, and it conveniently reduces wait times for the kitchen. Similarly, many flight and hotel aggregator websites intentionally introduce artificial delays in search times to convey a sense of thoroughness, which often results in increased sales.
It truly highlights how human behavior can be delightfully irrational.
Exactly. The law ultimately concludes that humans are fundamentally illogical, and sometimes you must deliberately craft illogical experiences to effectively influence them. Because, as it states so plainly, value does not exist. It's a perception we reach with expectations we meet.
Next, Law 15. The frame matters more than the picture. Bartlett recounts how his deep affection for a particular fashion brand was utterly shattered after he watched a video revealing their mass production process. He was wearing their shoes and a t-shirt at that very moment and seeing thousands of identical items churned out by machines. Despite the brand never claiming bespoke production, it completely altered his perception.
This profoundly illustrates that the way that something is packaged has a big impact on how it's received. This isn't exactly a new discovery. The iconic Pepsi challenge in the 1970s famously demonstrated that while people often preferred Pepsi in blind taste tests from plain cups, they consistently chose Coke when it was presented in its branded cans or bottles. The framing literally influenced perceived taste.
Or consider WOP, the popular health wearable. They deliberately refrained from adding a time display to their wristband, despite it being incredibly easy to do. Why?
To meticulously maintain the perception of an elite health device rather than simply a watch. Adding that objectively valuable feature would, counterintuitively, decrease the psychological value because it changes the fundamental frame.
So interesting. This raises an important question about communication strategies.
Right. For one company, simply changing the title salesperson to partnerships in email signatures resulted in a 31% increase in email responses. And marketing commonly employs the trick of stating a product is 90% lean instead of 10% fat. Both statements are factually identical, yet one frame is significantly more psychologically alluring.
So the crucial takeaway here is knowing how to strategically present your product or service through the most factual and compelling lens. It's not about deception, but rather thoughtful presentation. Let's turn our attention to Law 16. Use Goldilocks to your advantage. This law perfectly encapsulates a classic sales tactic many of us have undoubtedly encountered. I distinctly remember my real estate agent, Clive, showing me 3 properties. The first was too small and clearly overpriced. The second was just right in size and only marginally more expensive. The third was astronomically expensive. Predictably, like a puppet, I immediately chose the middle option, convinced I was making a smart decision.
This illustrates the Goldilocks Effect, where individuals tend to gravitate towards the middle option when presented with 3 choices. Panasonic leveraged this in 1992 by introducing a premium microwave, which then caused sales of their previously top-tier, now middle-priced, microwave to surge dramatically. Similarly, in an experiment, an all-inclusive Rome holiday became significantly more popular than an all-inclusive Paris holiday, simply by introducing a third option for Rome that notably excluded coffee. Bizarre, but effective.
The mere presence of that less appealing or slightly worse third option makes the middle choice appear like an undeniably better deal, even if its objective value hasn't changed. It's pure perception guiding our choices. Our next insight, Law 17. Let them try, and they will buy. This particular law struck a deep chord with me. I once playfully asked my young niece to return a Christmas present I had literally just handed to her. Her eyes immediately welled up with tears as she cried out, "No, Uncle Stephen, it's mine." That immediate possessive reaction right there encapsulates the endowment effect.
The endowment effect is a fascinating cognitive bias where people assign a significantly higher value to an item simply because they own it, regardless of its objective market value. Studies, such as those involving lottery tickets or Duke basketball tickets, have powerfully demonstrated this. Winners valued their tickets nearly 14 times higher than non-winners were willing to pay. 14 times.
It appears this possessiveness is deeply ingrained within us, with its evolutionary roots even observed in chimpanzees.
So what does this compelling insight mean for you? For marketers and creators, getting your product directly into customers' hands is an incredibly potent tool for fostering attachment and perceived value. As the law eloquently states, through the lens of ownership, the ordinary becomes the extraordinary.
Law 18. Fight for the first 5 seconds. This is a principle I personally live by. I used to intentionally begin my speeches with an awkward 10-second pause, then launch directly into a deliberate, impactful opening about being expelled from school and my mother's stern words, "This is exactly why you were expelled. Do not call me until you go back to university." I didn't bother with introductions. I understood those initial 5 seconds were do or die for capturing attention.
And that's precisely the critical insight here. In today's attention economy, those first 5 seconds are truly do or die. They single-handedly determine whether your audience will tune in or tune out, whether they'll bypass their habituation filters or let you become background noise. This applies everywhere.
Nobody exemplifies this better than Mr. Beast, right? He generates hundreds of millions of views on YouTube by obsessively crafting a compelling hook within the first 5 seconds of every video. He doesn't waste time on intros. He immediately screams a powerful promise like, "I recreated every single set from Squid Game in real life," or "I put 100 people inside of a giant circle." You're hooked instantly.
Steven Bartlett applies this very principle to his own successful podcast. Each law presented in his book, and thus in our discussion, begins with a short, compelling statement designed to immediately grab your attention. This simple, focused approach has demonstrably led to significant increases in audience retention. It works.
Attention truly is a precious commodity, isn't it? A precious gift. As the law reminds us, attention might just be the most generous gift that anyone can give. Let's discuss Law 19. You must sweat the small stuff. I genuinely believe that the Deep Dive podcast's success is directly attributable to our relentless commitment to sweating the small stuff. We obsess over thousands of what most people would dismiss as trivial details, researching a guest's favorite music, A/B testing titles, using data for bookings.
It sounds intense.
It is, but it matters.
And this approach aligns perfectly with the Kaizen philosophy of continuous incremental improvements. Think about Toyota's transformation in the 1980s. From being GM's least efficient plant, they embraced Kaizen, leading to an astonishing shift in productivity and quality. Why? Because the compounding effect of even 1% daily improvements is astronomical over time. Those small things add up.
Exactly. It's like neglecting to brush your teeth today. No big deal, right? But not brushing them for 5 years, you'll be in agony. That massive problem originated from a tiny, consistently overlooked detail. Bartlett perfectly quips, "Good work is the culmination of hundreds of tiny details."
Toyota successfully fostered this Kaizen culture by making idea generation part of everyone's job. They incentivized supervisors to support their teams, ensured ideas were implemented by the originator, and they educated everyone in the Kaizen philosophy, embedding it into their DNA.
This leads us directly to Law 20. A small miss now creates a big miss later. Continuing this theme, consider Tiger Woods. After his spectacular Masters win in 1997, just 7 months into his pro career, he made the audacious decision to completely rebuild his swing. His coach cautioned him, but Woods saw it as an opportunity for incremental, compounding improvement, inspired by principles like those at Toyota.
What's truly compelling here is how Woods embodied Darwin's survival of the fittest through continuous adaptation. It's like the 1 in 60 rule in aviation. Off target by just 1 degree means a 1-mile miss every 60 miles flown. This applies powerfully to our lives, careers, relationships. Small deviations left uncorrected amplify significantly over time. Constant course corrections are vital.
Booking.com is a fantastic contemporary example. Their immense success stems from relentless experimentation, literally running 1,000 experiments daily, effectively outfailing their competition.
Jeff Bezos at Amazon also famously adheres to a fail faster religion. He firmly believes failure and invention are inseparable twins. While many experiments fail, like the Fire Phone, the big winners pay for so many experiments, like AWS, which started small itself.
I witnessed this firsthand with a client. The Son's brand, by embracing speed, trust, and empowering type 2 decisions, reversible ones, had a failure rate 10 times higher than his father's brand. And it was the Son's brand that generated $1 billion, massively outperforming the father's. More failure led to more success.
So how do you cultivate such a culture? Bartlett outlines 5 key principles for outfailing the competition. 1. Eliminate bureaucracy. 2. Actively incentivize failure. Don't just praise success. 3. Increase employee responsibility. 4. Eliminate fear from leaders. 5. Share the failures openly. Because as the law concludes, failure, feedback. Feedback, knowledge. Knowledge, power. Failure gives you power.
Okay, let's move to Law 22. You must become a Plan A thinker. This law opens with the incredible, harrowing story of Nando Parrado, a survivor of the 1972 Andes plane crash. Stranded for 72 days, facing unimaginable starvation, he made the resolute decision to set off and find help, rather than resorting to eating the bodies of his mother and sister. His resolve was absolute. A plan B simply wasn't an option. As you put it, the only way you go forward is because you can't go back. Powerful stuff.
This story directly challenges the common advice to always have a plan B. Research actually suggests that having a plan B can negatively impact the success of plan A. It lessens the incentive to fully commit, removing the fear of failure that, paradoxically, can be a potent motivator.
It's crucial, though, to distinguish between being risky and being reckless. Being risky here means focusing your entire being on a primary goal. Recklessness is blindly pursuing it without necessary safety nets, especially with dependents or mortgages. Practicality still matters.
The powerful conclusion is truly inspiring. There's no greater force of creativity, determination, and commitment than a person undistracted by a plan B.
Next up, Law 23. Don't be an ostrich. Another cautionary tale from history. Bartlett recounts the sinking of the Titanic, highlighting the bizarre sense of calm and disbelief among some passengers. Despite clear warnings, many effectively leaned out of the uncomfortable truth, resulting in partially empty lifeboats. Some even had to be physically forced to board.
This phenomenon is the ostrich effect, our deeply ingrained tendency to avoid discomfort. Whether it's avoiding checking bank accounts or delaying doctor's appointments, we instinctively shy away from unpleasant realities. A UK bank report even found £55 million was lost due to people avoiding checking their finances. As the law states, in business, the person with the fewest blind spots stands the greatest chance of victory.
We've certainly seen this play out repeatedly in the corporate world. The downfall of Kodak, Blockbuster, CEOs fired for denying reality or inaction, refusing uncomfortable truths.
Nir Eyal explains humans are fundamentally motivated by avoiding discomfort, which is why we often choose distraction. Steven Bartlett offers a practical 4-step approach to dealing with discomfort. 1. Pause and acknowledge what isn't right. 2. Review yourself without judgment. 3. Speak your truth without blame. 4. Work to get to the objective truth, however hard.
So what does this mean for you? The ultimate takeaway is crystal clear. If you want long-term success, you have to get better at accepting uncomfortable truths as fast as possible. Quote, when you refuse to accept an uncomfortable truth, you're choosing to accept an uncomfortable future. Now, for Law 26, your skills are worthless, but your context is valuable. This is a really surprising and counterintuitive insight. Bartlett shares his own experience after stepping down as CEO. He was adamant he'd never work in marketing again. Yet, unexpectedly, he was offered an $8 million opportunity for his marketing skills. But critically, it was in the biotech sector.
Steven distilled 4 pivotal lessons from this. First, skills have no intrinsic value. Their worth is just what someone will pay. Second, value is determined by context. Skills are rarer, thus more valuable in different sectors. Third, the perception of rarity matters. His social media skills were a diamond in the rough in biotech, common in e-commerce. And fourth, worth is based on perceived value generation. His skills were valued higher in a high-stakes biotech IPO than marketing dresses.
So the actionable advice here, it strongly suggests considering strategically transplanting your existing skill set to a new industry where it's seen as rarer and more valuable. As the law concludes, to be considered the best, you don't need to be the best at any one thing. You need to be good at a variety of complementary and rare skills that your industry values and competitors lack. Let's delve into Law 27, the discipline equation. Death, time, and discipline. This law begins with a stark personal reflection from Steven Bartlett. He shares his age, 30, and his estimated days left, just 17,228. It's a powerful reminder of our tendency to overestimate the importance of daily trivialities and believe we'll live forever.
It's compelling to consider why we struggle with mortality. Often, it's a psychological survival mechanism. However, modern distractions create perpetual unease. Paradoxically, embracing mortality can be an antidote, leading to more gratitude, satisfaction, and motivation.
I've adopted Bartlett's time-betting mental model. Life is a roulette table, each hour a chip you must place intentionally. Netflix, gym, family. Your choice determines your life's rewards. Don't let distractions snatch the chip.
So if time management hacks aren't the answer, what is? Discipline. Steven defines discipline as the ongoing commitment to pursuing a goal, independent of fluctuating motivation levels. It involves self-control, delayed gratification, and perseverance. He then presents his discipline equation. Discipline, value of goal plus reward of pursuit, cost of pursuit.
He illustrates this with his DJing journey. He practices an hour, 5 times a week. Why? Because the value of the goal, obsession with music, thrill of performing, plus the reward of the pursuit, joy of discovery, flow state progress, consistently outweigh the cost of pursuit, time, energy, learning anxiety.
To influence this equation, Bartlett advises: 1. Clarify the goal's intrinsic value. Visualization helps. 2. Make the pursuit rewarding and engaging. Leverage progress. 3. Limit psychological material costs, like setting up DJ gear for easy access.
This also ties into knowing when to delegate. As Stephen and Jimmy Carr highlight, you don't need to do everything. Your ego might insist, but your potential insists you delegate weaknesses and focus on strengths. We've now arrived at pillar the 4th, the team, exploring the critical dynamics of building great groups. Let's kick off with Law 29. Create a cult mentality. Provocative title, right? Especially starting with Peter Thiel saying, you should run your startup like a cult. And it immediately brings to mind the awful origin of drinking the Kool-Aid.
But the distinction here is vital. Jim Collins argues there's nothing inherently wrong with a cult-like commitment to values in visionary companies. Thiel clarifies successful startups are fanatically right about something others miss, unlike destructive cults which are fanatically wrong.
You can see this cult-like intensity in early Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple. Extreme dedication, obsessive focus, shared vision.
Steven posits 4 company stages: cult, 0 to 1, growth, messy, enterprise, stable, and decline. That initial cult phase, with its clear values and dedication, is crucial for later success. Steve Jobs knew A players only hire other A players, creating a self-policing culture.
The essential ingredients of a healthy cult mentality. Often community, belonging, clear vision, shared belief in superiority or purpose.
But should you maintain it indefinitely? Absolutely not. It's unsustainable long term. The goal is to evolve into a sustainable culture. Authentic engagement, autonomy, challenge, progress, psychological safety.
Our next insight is Law 30. The 3 bars for building great teams, firing toxic influences. Rio Ferdinand recalls Sir Alex Ferguson letting go of top players like Stam, Beckham, Van Nistelrooy, specifically because they challenged team culture despite their talent.
This highlights a crucial trait of great managers: the conviction to remove bad apples, regardless of talent, because one bad apple can spoil the rest. Richard Branson admitted firing people was the hardest thing, but necessary to protect the integrity of the company and the culture.
Barbara Corcoran holds a very strong stance. She insists on removing toxic influences quickly because they ruin good kids and take your energy away, calls them thieves in the night.
Harvard Business Review studies support this. Toxic employees are contagious, increasing misconduct, eroding trust, social multiplier of 1.59. Will Phelps' study showed a single negative member can derail a team, outweighing positive behaviors.
The evidence is unequivocal. Negative behavior completely outweighed positive behavior. A single bad apple can spoil the team's culture, while 1, 2, or 3 good workers cannot unspoil it. Protect the team's health first. Let's delve into Law 31. Leverage the power of progress. This shines a light on Sir David Brailsford, mastermind of British cycling's marginal gains. He transformed them from laughingstock to Olympic champions by obsessing over 1% improvements everywhere. Antibacterial gel, bike seats, even pillows for better sleep.
Brailsford's core insight is remarkable. People want a feeling of progression. If we aim for perfection, we'll fail. So instead of perfection, let's have a little progression. Small, consistent changes create stickability and drive motivation.
This is the superpower of small wins. Teresa Amabiel's research shows even incremental progress generates positive emotions and fuels motivation. Mirror AL reinforces this. People procrastinate to avoid psychological discomfort, and scaling down tasks into small wins overcomes resistance.
To leverage this power, Steven outlines 5 steps. 1. Clarify the destination. 2. Set achievable targets like OKRs. 3. Grant autonomy. 4. Remove friction, obstacles, bureaucracy. 5. broadcast the progress widely.
Because, as he aptly puts it, the most professionally rewarding feeling in the world is a sense of forward motion. Our final law today is Law 32. You must be an inconsistent leader. Sounds counterintuitive, right? But Steven uses Sir Alex Ferguson as the prime example. Patrice Ever recalls being publicly berated by Ferguson at halftime, despite playing well. It was bewildering, but it sent a message to the entire team.
Ferguson's genius was avoiding a blanket treatment. He understood each individual and adapted his approach. Rio Ferdinand confirms Ferguson knew players' personal lives. Grandfather's favorite drinks, fostering immense loyalty. Players fought harder for him.
Other players, Schmeichel, Beckham, echoed this. Ferguson knew when to deliver a kick up the backside and when an arm around the shoulder, always calibrated.
So what does this mean for effective leadership? Rigid consistency is often less effective than possessing emotional savant qualities. It's about deeply understanding individual motivators and skillfully applying the right pressure or support for each person to maximize potential.
Wow. This deep dive into Steven Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO has been an incredible journey, hasn't it? The sheer depth of wisdom Bartlett has distilled. It's truly remarkable. It really does serve as a powerful shortcut. Understanding fundamental truths about personal growth, team dynamics, navigating our complex world.
Absolutely. The insights are surprisingly profound, often wonderfully counterintuitive. We really encourage you to reflect on which of these laws resonated most deeply with you. Imagine the significant positive shift you could create by simply applying just one of these powerful insights. True greatness, it seems, isn't about grand gestures. It's about the consistent, deliberate application of these often overlooked principles.
If you're ready to dive even deeper and unlock more surprising wisdom, you can grab a copy of The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. Check out the link in the description for more details. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe to Books and Bytes for more expertly curated insights into the books that matter most.